One of my favorite things to do at the start of each new year as an investor is to have a look at the property market predictions for the coming year. Now, as you guys know, I completely geek out on the data, which is why I'm super excited to bring you the ideas firstly from SQM Research, who put together that incredible boom and bust bulletin report each year. Now, what I love about this report is it looks at each of Australia's capital cities and 4 different scenarios for each city. Now, depending on which scenario, and these scenarios are based on when the Australian government reduces interest rates this year, the population growth, and the feeling or the sentiment in the economy. But Perth is looking phenomenal. In SQM's boom bust bulletin, the worst scenario for Perth is about 7% growth, all the way up to 20% growth if the population continues to explode and rates come down before the middle of the year. Brisbane and Adelaide are also looking phenomenal, with Brisbane looking at doing between 4 to 16% growth and Adelaide looking to do somewhere between 4 and 14% in 2025. Now, I don't know about you guys, but this stuff gets me excited because it gives me confidence that someone much smarter than me that's looking at so many indicators in the economy is putting out information which is being reshared by the likes of the ABC, the Australian Financial Review, Domain, realestate.com, and pumped out to everybody else in the market so that the way that they feel about this year is tilting on the more positive side as well. Now, Melbourne and Sydney look funny this year. If interest rates come down, then they're expected to do extremely well. But if interest rates stay as they are, or the population growth rates come down a little bit, then we could be in for some bad weather in those markets. Melbourne is expected to do anywhere between -7 and +6%, where Sydney is expected to do anywhere between -10 and +7%, depending on these scenarios. Canberra and Hobart are also in that same sort of box, depending on how things go, with Canberra doing anywhere between -8 and +6%, and Hobart doing somewhere between -8 and +5% after incredible runs in both of those markets in the last 10 years. Now, one of the slow burners that not many people are talking about at the moment in Australia is Darwin. Now, Darwin's expected to do anywhere between +3 and +10%. But after looking at 19 major markets in Australia, across about 4,222 suburbs, Darwin, statistically speaking, is Australia's most undervalued capital city in the market. And at some point, things will have to start turning up there, which may be this year or the year after. Now, I always like to have a look at what the likes of realestate.com and Domain are saying about the coming year, because they are the sources of truth and the place that most Australians go to read their real estate news. Now, realestate.com's pumping out some very, very positive stuff too, saying that if the RBA starts to reduce rates as early as February this year, which could happen, it's about a 50-50 chance at the moment, then Australia-wide we should see a 10% average growth year across the country. Now, when looking at what the Australian Financial Review and the economists and writers there have got to say about 2025, they're basically saying that it really hinges on which way the Reserve Bank goes with its decision. If they reduce rates, then we should see some very, very positive growth and extremely strong confidence coming back into the market. If they stay as they are, then they expect Brisbane, Perth and Adelaide to continue to kick ass because they're the markets that are undersupplied with very, very strong local and investment demand at the moment. But unfortunately, the Sydneys, the Melbournes and all of those other major metro markets that I talked about a minute ago are looking pretty dire, which means flat or potentially even slightly negative growth. Now, the guys over there at Domain obviously get a huge amount of beautiful data coming in that the likes of you and I can never get access to with their algorithm. Their expectations for the Australian property market in 2025 are extremely bullish. They expect Perth to actually do somewhere between 8 and 10%, with Brisbane doing somewhere between 5 and 7%, and Adelaide sitting up there in the 7 to 9% range as well. Their expectations for Sydney and Melbourne are actually a little bit better, with Melbourne, regardless of how interest rates go, expected to do somewhere between 3 and 5%, which is in line with what CoreLogic's saying, with Melbourne doing somewhere between 5.3 and 6% this year, and Sydney as well doing somewhere between 4 and 6% growth. To me, what's more important than the predictions, because me, you, and none of these guys have a crystal ball, and there's no way that we can ever see what's going to truly happen this year without watching the year unfold. But what's positive is that this news is going out to the likes of you and me early, and then the rest of the market over the course of the year will catch up. Now, what I've found personally from being an investor over the last 15 years and buying over $550 million worth of property for myself and my clients over that time is that as confidence improves in a market where people have been sitting there for a while and just waiting for things to go well, on top of some of Australia's key markets being massively undersupplied, as well as huge amounts of infrastructure going in and easier money at the moment, then once that fire gets lit, if rates start coming down, we should see a very, very positive year, either this year or later next year for Australian property prices in the right undervalued markets and suburbs. Now, CoreLogic is also pretty bullish about the Australian market this year. Again, all depending on how the rate cuts go, but they believe if they begin cutting them in February or May this year, then there is a really, really strong underlying demand that they believe sits more in the affordable part of the market, the sort of sub $700,000 or $800,000 range, is going to get a very, very big positive effect from the rates coming back down. The last person that I wanted to touch on, who I recently sat down for an hour and asked a whole bunch of questions about 2025 and 2026, is the great Phil Anderson. Thank you, Phil, for spending some time with me. He actually, you might not even be able to see them up there, but he wrote The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking. His colleague Akil just wrote The Secret Wealth Advantage. Basically, Phil is one of the guys that found this longer term 18.6 year real estate cycle. After sitting with Phil, he thinks that 2025 and 2026 will be extremely positive, particularly for the markets in Australia like Brisbane, like Melbourne, that are super affordable. Brisbane obviously looks great because of the coming Olympic Games, with so many people moving up here. And with Melbourne looking so good for me personally at the moment, mainly because I hadn't looked at that market properly for about 5 years. And after looking at 523 suburbs in Melbourne, finding 18 of them that are phenomenal, close to the city, where you can still buy townhouses for $450K or incredible houses in the $500 to $600K range. So I think because the gap between house prices in Sydney and Melbourne is a 60% difference at the moment, and now Melbourne's cheaper than Perth, Adelaide, Brisbane, Canberra, and Sydney, I think we'll start to see that market come on over the next few years. Growth rates 10 years from now for Melbourne looking absolutely phenomenal from today. G'day guys, my name's Ben and I'm the director here at Pumped on Property, and I just want to say a massive thank you for watching our content today. Now, if you're thinking about buying an investment property in the next 3 to 12 months, then the team and I would love to offer you a one-on-one strategy session. In that session, we can talk about exactly where you are right now, where you'd like to be longer term, and we can deeply educate you on the Australian market. And then you can take that information and go and absolutely smash it on your own, or potentially become one of the small number of clients that we work with each week. To book your session, all you have to do is go to www.pumpedonproperty.com and click that book your free strategy session button. But either way, we wish you all the best on your journey as an investor to financial freedom.